Danny, welcome to Queer Conversation again.
Thank you.
You are back to give us an introduction of one or two of your characters from your recently released book, She and Her Pretty Friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And today, tell us who are you going to introduce?
I want to introduce Katie Lush and Lesbia Harford, who are two of my favorites from the book and who I've been researching for about 5 years. They were based in Melbourne. Lesbia was born in Brighton, which is the beach side of Melbourne, and Katie Lush grew up in Kew, and she never really left Kew, only like very briefly, but she lived in her family home. They were two individuals, but at their time at Melbourne University, they met. Katie was a philosophy tutor at Melbourne University in Ormond College, and she did her Bachelor of Arts and Master of Arts there. Lesbia Harford did a law degree at Melbourne University, and she may have met Katie through philosophy classes, or she might have just met through, there weren't a lot of women at the University of Melbourne during this time, and there was a club called the Princess Ida Club. So a lot of women met through that club, and there was a special room where they would meet up in. So possibly they met through there. And also they just shared similar radical political ideas. They were both socialists, and they were at university during the 1910s. So there was a lot of debate about conscription during this time. Both of them were on the anti-conscription time and joined a lot of groups and political groups and went to rallies and everything. Katie Lush used to do public speaking at rallies in some of the working class neighborhoods like Richmond. So basically they developed a friendship, and some researchers assumed that they were in a lesbian relationship because they found these poems that Lesbia had written about Katie and inspired by Katie that were filled with affection and kind of wrote about kissing Katie and things like that. And they seem to, for me while reading them, they seem to show an unreciprocated love. So I'm not sure if they actually were in a relationship or if Lesbia just had a really big crush on Katie, which Katie either reciprocated but didn't want to pursue that relationship given the time and everything, or she just didn't feel the same way for Lesbia. But they were good friends, and there is one account that when Lesbia died, Katie was at her bedside. So Lesbia died quite young. I think, I can't, off the top of my head, so she would have been in her early 30s, I think. She died in 1927. And I think she had pneumonia, and then which developed into tuberculosis. But she was born with a heart condition, which made her very chronically ill throughout her life, and she didn't have a long lifespan from birth, which she was aware of. And she had chronic fatigue and would get out of breath easily. People described her with a faint bluish complexion because it had something to do with the oxygen, how that passed through her body and through her heart. So but that she didn't let it, she had to rest a lot, but she still didn't let it restrict her life that much. She still was working. When she graduated law, instead of pursuing the law industry and actually going to court, she decided to work in factories. But both of them went to political rallies and public debates. Katie Lush spoke against Robert Menzies before he became Prime Minister at a conscription debate. And they were surrounded by figures that went on to establish the Communist Party of Australia. They were surrounded by all of these intellectuals and people like Maurice Blackburn during this time. So they were I think their activism didn't go so far to get them arrested or put in prison, but they were I think they were part of the intellectual academic sort of activism side. I wanted to include them both, particularly because Lesbia's poems do indicate that she had some sort of same-sex affection for probably not just Katie, but other women as well, other women who weren't named. She had relationships with men throughout her life, and she married a fellow unionist, but they ended up separating. I don't think the marriage lasted very long. So I wanted to include Lesbia, and I really liked reading about her relationship with Katie and trying to uncover more information about Katie herself, because she just seems like such a footnote in Lesbia's life rather than a fully fleshed person herself. So there was only a few of her poems published while she was living, but after she passed away, there have been 3 poetry collections of hers that have been published. The first one was in 1941 by one of her close friends, Nettie Palmer, who is also a big name in Australian literature for that time. And then there was a second edition published in the 1980s, and then a third edition published in 2014.
Thank you, Danny, for introducing Katie and Lesbia. And for our viewers, you can read up more about other characters in Danny's book, She and Her Pretty Friends, which is out now. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.